The new book is The Real Hank Aaron, an intimate look at the life and legacy of the home run king. The author is Terence Moore, 25 years a columnist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Terence Moore joins us now. Terence, it's Brian Ketty. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, Terence, Aaron always, historically, famously, always showed strength and resolve when facing racism, but breaking in or when chasing the home run record, what were his real feelings having gone through that as he reached later years of his life?
Well, let's start with that period in the early 70s when he was chasing Babe Ruth's record. Everybody wants to focus on that period as when he caught the most hell, so to speak, as far as death threats and hate mail and what have you. Well, what I detail in this book, after a 40-year relationship with Hank Aaron, I was closer to Hank than any other reporter in history. He was continually getting hate and those type of things after his playing career when he became an executive for the Braves. People forget that he was sort of like a Jackie Robinson of baseball executives. So when he retired in 1976 and became an executive with the Braves, he became very outspoken when it came to blacks in baseball, civil rights, and what have you. And he was not a guy that was treated very kindly, contrary to popular belief, during that period for the rest of his life until about the last 5 or 10 years.
You know, he mentioned Pete Rose, right, in a conversation with you, chasing Ty Cobb, and he said Rose was having the time of his life. And what did he have to say about that when he was chasing Babe Ruth, not having a good experience in the society?
Yeah, you know what, Brian, and I can't stress this enough. People will never know, okay, until they read this book, I guess, how much that Babe Ruth chase haunted Hank Aaron in so many ways. And what you're alluding to right there, the last interview that Hank ever did with anybody was with me, as far as an official interview. And it was like every time I talked to Hank, and I talked to him thousands of times, he always told me something that I've never heard before from him. And one of which, in his last interview, this was in the fall of 2020, he died in January 2021, was how he was so just resentful of the fact that Pete Rose and Cal Ripken and all these other guys, when they were going after these historic records, could go through that entire period basically unmolested, without hate mail and those type of things, and being loved by the masses, where he had to go through all of that stuff he went through with chasing Babe Ruth. Wasn't a very pleasant experience. And it was something that I don't believe, and I know that the public did not realize how much he would look at these other things that went on as far as record-breaking moments and just be, sort of regretful of what they were going through compared to himself.
But he knew he was a beloved player, right? He knew, the respect that he's earned through many of those years. I know we're concentrating on this. He knew there was hate, but he knew there was love too, right? What sense did you get from him on that?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And there's no doubt about that. And as a matter of fact, he keep concentrating on the Babe Ruth chase, but let's go back to that again, because that's what everybody remembers. But Hank was just telling me that he was really amazed, for instance, in Cincinnati, and when he hit the Babe Ruth tying home run 7-14 against Jack Bellingham, and again, he's playing for the Atlanta Braves, he was saying that he got as much love at Riverfront Stadium as he would have gotten at Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. At that point, when he was close to the record and when he broke the record, as far as the masses are concerned, he felt that shift where people started to love him the way that they should, at least the masses.
Right. Barry Bonds, then. You bring up a lot. You discuss Barry Bonds with Hank. What did he think of Barry Bonds and the home run chase on him?
Well, you know what, Brian? This is a little complicated, but I'm going to make it very simple. First, I can't stress this enough. Hank loved the record, but he wasn't obsessed with the record. So let me get that out of the way. If Barry Bonds broke the record, or A-Rod, or Ken Griffey, he could care less. Okay, but here's the thing. And the other thing is, Hank did not really mind Barry Bonds, the player. His thing to me was always with the steroids, until or unless Barry Bonds confessed that he actually took steroids to have an advantage. Hank was willing to give him a break. Hank's problem with Barry was he didn't really care for Barry the person. As a matter of fact, I got this entire thing in the book about how the famous commercial that Barry and Hank did for the 2002 Super Bowl for Charles Schwab almost didn't happen, because Hank told me he originally didn't want to do it, but he agreed at the last minute to do it when it was guaranteed that they didn't have to be in the same space together. So that just gives you an inkling of what we're talking about.
So he didn't, even though I think you pointed out it was for a lot of money too, it was like nearly $2 million. He wouldn't have done that commercial if he had to be doing it with Barry Bonds, physically with him.
That's exactly right. And again, we have to understand, Hank and Barry were two different persons in so many different ways, which I explain in the book. I'm just going to give you this one big thing that a lot of people can relate to. Hank was one of the most approachable superstars in the history of sports. I mean, he would talk to anybody and give you time of day. And as we know, Barry, not so much. Okay. So it was that yin and yang type of situation that really Hank didn't care for when it came to Barry.
Now, and you bring that up, and there's so many times through the years where I saw Hank and his wife Billy in Cooperstown or at the World Series when they were giving out the Hank Aaron Award. He was always gracious and kind, and right, for a man so famous, so iconic, there's a reason he was always that good, had real grace on the public stage. I want to ask you, though, one other thing, Terence. When he died, we did hear from so many in the Braves organization affected by him, touched by him in his work as an executive. So again, he's Hank Aaron. He could have just been anything he wanted with the Braves, just be a superstar. What kind of executive was he?
He was superb. One of the things that also I talk about in this book, he does not get enough credit for this, Brian. Matter of fact, the last hire that Hank Aaron made as farm director was a guy named Brian Snitker.
Yeah.
We talk about this in the book. Hank told me that he's the one that encouraged Brian Snitker to go from being this has-been or nothing backup catcher to being, pursue the managerial thing. And Hank told me, he says, Terence, can't realize how many people are all over me saying that. What do you see in this guy? Now, this is back in 1980. Why do you keep him around? And he was telling me that people always wanted him to fire Brian Snitker, and Hank would never do it. And I think Hank sort of proved to be omniscient with that one, okay? And then just in general, you look at that streak, the record streak of 14 consecutive division titles everybody knows about. If you go back and you look real deeply, Hank's fingerprints were all through that, because many of the players that came up through that run, like the David Justices, the Tom Glavis, the Mark Lemkes, and the Jeff Blausers, they got their start under Hank Aaron's farm system. Okay, and he doesn't get enough credit for that as he should. I mean, no offense against John Sherholtz and Bobby Cox, Hall of Famers, but Hank is a Hall of Famer too, not only on the field, but also when it comes to the front office.
Well, you hear from so many people within the organization. Obviously, Brian Snitker still being there. One last thing, at the Louisville Slugger Museum, they put up a statue of Hank Aaron. And had you written this, Terence, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I'll go to a book on Hank Aaron. But you do wonder, and what have you found now with where we are, with the way media works so quickly? Do you worry about this generation even knowing about Hank Aaron and what he was to this country?
Well, and that's another good question, Brian. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this book. Because Hank Aaron, when you find out in this book, and I call it The Real Hank Aaron, he was much more than 755. And I'll tell you this quick little story. His idol was Jackie Robinson. Love Jackie Robinson. People don't realize how big Jackie Robinson was away from baseball, broke the color barrier and that sort of thing. But Jackie been a civil rights leader. So back when Jackie died in October of 1972, Hank went to Ernie Banks and Willie Mays and said, look, now that Jackie has died, it's up to us to carry on what he started when it came to being a civil rights advocate. And Ernie and Willie, respectfully declined. They didn't want to be associated with that because of their image. And Hank said, you know what? I'll do it myself. He didn't make a big deal about it. But when you read this book, you will find out how big Hank was, even beyond just the playing field, again, with what he did with baseball, helping other minorities, and just helping society in general. And he just loved young people. I can go on and on and on because he was that big, baseball and otherwise.
No question. A true gentleman, a great American, iconic player. I hope people, and especially younger people, get to read this book. Terence, best of luck with the book. Congratulations to you, and we'll do it again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.